Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and we're here with Ren West, who is the founder of Pacific Storytelling. Now, what's Pacific Storytelling? Well, we're going to tell you all about that. Ren is actually, and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Ren, first of all, how are you and where are you?
Hi, James. It's so good to talk to you. I'm really well, keeping safe and well in Santa Monica, Los Angeles, just a little bit far from my original homeland of New Zealand, though.
That's not too far away. And as I think we were talking before, that you haven't had a chance to get back to your homeland of New Zealand since December. So it's been a while, right?
It has. But look, we're luckier than most and can't complain with the smoke's finally cleared in Los Angeles. So
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you have that problem too. I almost forgot about it. But now let's talk a little bit about it's your new company or organization called Pacific Storytelling. When did you start it, and what does it do?
Sure. Well, that's the dreaded word pivot that we're all talking about. But basically, I've worked for a major wholesaler, a South Pacific wholesaler, here in Los Angeles. And then in April, with things starting to shut down with the COVID and all of that, I had a little bit of extra time on my hands. And something that I've always advocated for in all of my roles that I've had throughout the industry is advocating for and on behalf of our Indigenous people and cultures. And so there was, you remember at the beginning of the year, we were facing a little bit of a moment of the start of a racial justice movement.
I think it's still ongoing, actually. But
Right. But the world, there's just was this a huge amount of activity that was happening in the world, and I felt a little bit powerless. And I thought, no, actually, you can do something about this. You can contribute to the conversation, and you can help the industry learn a little bit more about other people as well. And after all, travel and tourism, all we do is advocate to learn about other places and people. And so that's how Pacific Storytelling came about. And we're a free service. We're offer free cultural sensitivity training by Indigenous people, but focus specifically on the South Pacific cultures.
So you are basically focusing on all of the different cultures that French Polynesia, Fiji, New Zealand, of course, I guess some Australia, Cook Islands. I mean, you can tell me more about it. And we're talking about the different peoples who are kind of united in some way, because obviously there are some links between all of even Hawaii, for that matter. And I know you do that. So what's your goal in trying to tell potential travelers about these people and what they should know about them in order to benefit more when they eventually can restart traveling?
Sure. Yeah, look, when you talk about race and culture, people start to clench up a little bit and they start to lean back and they get a little bit scared, because I personally think nobody wants to insult anyone else. Everyone wants to be respectful, but they don't want to ask a silly question, and they don't want to appear ignorant of other people and cultures. And so the idea is that we provide training resources. So we have a free cultural sensitivity program, which is up on our website, pacificstorytelling.com, which is just an introduction to that part of the world. And then we have some more in-depth training, which looks at the specific cultures of the Pacific, and we're adding to that content on a monthly basis. We're just a one-man band here, and we're doing it as fast as we can, but there's just been such great reception through the Pacific. They're wanting to get their stories out, and we're having a really good reception here with our travel community as well, who are loving the content that's coming out.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your background, because you have been working in travel and tourism, and especially in that region for quite some time. You've worked for Travel 2, I understand, and Qantas Vacations, and of course Tourism New Zealand. And I understand your family also was involved in running one of New Zealand's longest travel companies. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you've gotten here at this point.
Sure. Well, travel is actually, for us and my family, it's a vocation. It sounds a little bit cliche, but it really is a calling. And I've been working in this industry since I was in my mother's stomach. My mother comes from a family of what we call tour guides in the geothermal valley of Whakarewarewa in Rotorua, New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And so literally she was carrying me in her stomach and sharing the Māori culture with visitors. And, her grandmother taught her, and so on and so on, where to the point I am sixth generation of my family to actively work in tourism. And that's how my family got involved with tourism, is simply by taking people through our very unique backyard. And that's how tourism in New Zealand started, was with these beautiful women sharing their home. And so it's something that's a legacy for us. It's something that we take very, very seriously. And I've dedicated my entire life to helping to promote as well.
Well, now you're launching this project, which is really, hopefully get people interested in all these indigenous cultures around the South Pacific. Let me ask you, how can Pacific Storytelling benefit travel advisors, and how can they work with you? And I understand, you also have some online training that you can provide to them.
Absolutely. So we have on our website, pacificstorytelling.com, a full catalogue of training. I mentioned earlier that free cultural sensitivity introductory course, but then we do monthly webinars with cultural experts. So each month we'll have a new cultural expert from a different destination teaching us about their way of life. Mm-hmm. We also do a bi-monthly newsletter with product information, the latest information about the regions, COVID closures, all of that sort of stuff, the latest that we have, and also some good news. We try to find some good news stories to help lift everyone. Everyone likes to have a nice lighthearted read
Sure.
of something as well.
Now, like us, like Insider Travel Report, I understand you also do interviews for Pacific Storytelling, but with, in this case, cultural personalities to sort of educate people about indigenous tourism. Can you give us some examples of some of the people you've interviewed and the cultures?
Sure. So last month we interviewed a master navigator. His name is Tua Pittman, and he comes from the Cook Islands. And basically, his special skill is to read the night sky and to navigate the ocean, which is this ancient art form that not a lot of people have that information anymore, or that skill. And he actually sailed from the Cook Islands all the way to San Francisco. So he was able to share with us his story about retracing a sort of an ancestral path. He even talked us through some of the environmental things that he saw along the way, such as the huge waste problem that they have in the Pacific Ocean off Hawaii. He was able to provide that kind of information. We've talked with Tahiari Pariente from Raiatea in French Polynesia, who practices a very ancient form of Tahitian religion. He also runs his own adventure tourism company in Raiatea as well. Next month, we focus on our cousins in Hawaii, and we have a Dr. Kiao Neesmith, and who will bring a historic perspective, but also we are joined by a very special guest, Kumu Maika Kamoha Ali'i, who is actually a descendant of King Kamehameha, one of the original monarchs of Hawaii. So those are the type of people that we interview, and we just ask them their stories. We ask them where they come from, how they're doing in this new world. We talk about, what is their response to COVID? And is there a traditional response to COVID? And some of the beautiful things that we've seen is that some of these very small island communities are going back to a traditional way of operating, where this person gets the fish and this person grows this vegetable, and you share amongst each other. And it's been very interesting to learn just how other people are responding to the world, but also to COVID more specifically.
Now, you can find these interviews on the website on pacificstorytelling.com.
Mm-hmm. It's all up there.
Great. Now, how do you think this information that you can provide about all these wonderful Pacific destinations and cultures can help travel advisors sell better to their clients? And how does an understanding of these indigenous cultures sort of help travel advisors actually sell these destinations?
It sort of goes back to that point I made earlier, is that it's just a little bit of information so that you know the basics before you enter a destination. It actually enables you, when you do travel, to feel more confident to ask that question, or to participate in a cultural ritual of the local people, and to have a little bit of that knowledge about what's happening. So I think it's just an education piece, but in terms of, I think it also presents a new marketing opportunity. Africa is a huge destination which has, done a very good job of promoting the cultures of Africa. Mm-hmm. But the Pacific is it's the largest thing on the planet. It takes up a third of the world's surface. There are over 1,000 islands in the Pacific and over 1,000 languages. If that's not something that's ripe for exploration and expedition, then I don't know what is. So our goal is to bring a little bit of that information and just whet the appetite just a little bit for people to learn about a culture that, especially if you're on the west coast of North America, is very, very accessible to you.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because a lot of even some travel advisors get confused about where everything is in terms of Tahiti, Fiji, Hawaii, Cook Islands, New Zealand. And it is amazing how over that huge expansive territory, we have these cultures that are all in some ways similar. I've been lucky enough to obviously go to Hawaii, and I've been to Tahiti and French Polynesia and to Fiji. Sadly, never to New Zealand yet. I keep saying I was going to do that. Last year I thought I'd do it, but I didn't. But that actually brings up a question. We have all these cultures right now, and right now we can't travel. How can we still support sort of cultural tourism when we can't travel?
Yeah, good question. Well, there is always a way to engage. And I've been thinking about this question. And, in America, where your audience is and where I'm based, we have the opportunity to engage virtually online. A lot of these cultural institutions down in the Pacific are hosting virtual events. The tourism boards and those type of organizations are hosting those too. But then as things slowly start to open, and always respect your local guidelines. But look, in Washington, D.C., you have the E Ala E Hawaiian Cultural Center, where you can go and learn about the people of Hawaii. If you're based in Chicago, the Field Museum there has a full-size Maori meeting house there. And so there is always a little point of where you can learn about another culture from another place in your backyard. You just have to look hard enough for that as well. So that's how I would engage with the Pacific cultures from home.
Well, that's great advice, because we want to learn more about it, and then hopefully at some point, travel advisors can send their clients there too as well. And of course, that brings up the question: what is open to U.S. travelers in the Pacific now? I know some places, I believe Tahiti is open, Hawaii with quarantine. I don't know about Cook Islands, Fiji, and we've heard that New Zealand and Australia are really not open right now. But maybe you can fill us in and tell us what's open and what's not.
Sure. So Australia and New Zealand and the Pacific in general did a quite a hard immigration stance. They closed the borders quite early and quite strongly. And so essentially Australia and New Zealand are closed to North American visitors. But there is signs of hope there. They've already opened up traffic in one direction so that New Zealanders can travel to Australia without the need to quarantine. They still will have to quarantine on the way back, but it's a step. It's a movement in the direction that we're hoping for. There is also talk of air bridge between the Cook Islands and New Zealand, which will hopefully be in place by the end of the year. And they're talking about Fiji in that same way. But the Cook Islands and Fiji, unfortunately, both as well, are closed to North American visitors right now. However, as you mentioned, Tahiti is open and has been open since the 15th of July. And that's something that I've been monitoring quite closely. We've been looking at the cases. They're doing a really good job of reporting the information that they have. And you, as a visitor, have to take I think it's called an RT-PCR test, which is not a rapid coronavirus test, but it is a nasal swab and a throat swab that's taken 72 hours before departure. And you present that on check-in before you travel down there. Mm-hmm. Then when you're there, you self-test again 4 days into your trip, and they monitor that, and know where you are at all times. So it does, from everything that I see, that visitors aren't contributing to the climb of the numbers in French Polynesia. It seems to be the local community, which is having a little bit of an issue, but nowhere near sort of the scale that we have here in America at the moment. So it is possible and very doable to get to French Polynesia right now. Absolutely. Hawaii, they've put off their opening a couple of times, but it looks very promising that come the 15th of this month, October, that with a test you'll be able to enter Hawaii once again. So, small steps, but as long as we're moving in a direction.
Yeah, well, in Hawaii, at least, a lot of airlines that go there have recently put in testing programs for a fee so that you can take that test, and then when you get there, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to quarantine. So that's what they seem to be going in that direction. I mean, I think everyone should be going in that direction. It's just not fast enough. We really need more testing and quicker testing. I mean, that's one of the challenges these days is you do get these, be tested within 48 hours or 72 hours. But to be honest with you, to find a test in America that is that quick is somewhat challenging. And I've had to do it a couple of times, and it's not as easy as everyone thinks, especially at the levels they want it. So it's funny. It's great. I've been to French Polynesia a number of times and to Fiji a couple of times and Hawaii a few times, and they're wonderful destinations, but they are island nations. And by definition, they are kind of closed off to the world, and no one wants to introduce COVID or anything else on your travels.
Yeah. And you'll, have to make your decision about what you're comfortable with as well. Yeah. We're all navigating through this.
Absolutely. Now, what other messages do you have for our Travel Advisor readers and viewers out there about the travel opportunities in the Pacific and also what your company offers in terms of helping to understand those destinations? Sure.
Well, look, just think of us as another tool in your arsenal. We're just a free service available to you to help provide information about the cultures of the Pacific. So we've talked about COVID and how, the border regulations can change and all of that information. It can make your head spin a little bit. But one thing that won't change is the culture, and the people will always be there, and the and the culture will always be there as well. And so when you're training and upskilling yourself in this time when we're all sort of doing everything we can to keep up with the latest, just remember that learning about culture is always going to be a valuable thing for you, and it's going to help you as an agent, but also help your clients as well. And we encourage you to share our resources with your clients. There's no commercial information or insider information in there. It's all very much public friendly information. So do feel free to share our resources as well. And it's all available on our website, pacificstorytelling.com. And so you're able to take full advantage of that. When you're there, you can sign up for our newsletters, which are bi-monthly. And you can also sign up to our social channels as well. We're across Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we're always happy to receive an email and help you any way we can as well. Our email being hello@pacificstorytelling.com.
Well, Ren, thank you very much for taking the time to tell us about pacificstorytelling.com. It's a fascinating idea, one that has arisen from this crisis, but maybe one that needed to be coming out a lot before then, just to get people to understand these indigenous cultures and the role they play. I know they are a very, very big part of all the destinations we've been talking about, all the island destinations, New Zealand, Tahiti, Cook Islands, Fiji, Hawaii. It's an amazing culture. I've had a chance to experience a lot of it over the years, and it's always been amazing how similar the cultures, yet different in some ways, and to find out more about them. And as I said, I have studied the Maoris in New Zealand. I've never had a chance to go down there, but that is still on my proverbial bucket list. But I think maybe I'll take a look at your website and see what you've written or people you've interviewed in that culture as well, since I have a feeling you probably know that one a little bit more than even the others, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
But again, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us all about this.
My pleasure. Thank you, James. Thanks. Please keep doing what you're doing.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.